This election was a landslide. Yes, this is the 1984 election. This is literally 1984. There was an even crazier electoral college map that I saw recently, way further back, but this is usually the most often talked about. Oh, it might have been Roosevelt versus Landon back in 1936. Just Minnesota, though.
1984 U.S. presidential election featuring Republican candidate
yeah, Minnesota's
Ronald
been voting
Reagan
Democrat for a long
Democratic
time.
Candidate Walter Mondale. If you look closely, you can see that Minnesota was the only blue state. And it was a close call too. Mondale won Minnesota with 1,036,364 votes, while Reagan trailed just behind at 1,032,603
You almost got completely sweeped.
Votes here, people. This election was nearly a 50-state sweep for Reagan. In fact, before Minnesota was called, Washington, D.C. was the only blue spot on the entire map.
Utter domination. Fun fact, Reagan and the GOP didn't spend a penny on campaigning in Minnesota since Reagan wanted his opponent to win at least one, or at least his home state. Fun fact, this makes one of the most unanimous elections, with the first place going to Washington himself with pure unanimity. Well, yeah, he's the first president. That's pretty simple. When asked what he wanted for Christmas just a month after this election, Reagan said Minnesota would have been nice. Cool video, Bryce. Thank you. Trump's next target? Oh, no.
Denmark. Which countries would be next?
Ooh, Panama, Mexico, probably Canada. Yeah, it's probably Canada.
So next target could be Canada's northern territories, since scientists claim
just the northern territories? Pretty sure he wants all of it. I mean, there's a reason why he talks about Canada being the 51st state. I feel like Canada's got to be the #1 choice.
Territories could become really useful in the near future,
but yes,
just like Greenland. But Canada would probably not sell even for $100 trillion. Trump can instead go for Svalbard.
Canada's not going to sell themselves. You can do that? Who would get the money if you sell yourself? Yeah, these North Sea passages.
Not sell even for $100 trillion. Trump can instead go for Svalbard, which Norway may be okay with selling for a lot of money. So Norwegians, please share your thoughts and comments.
That's an interesting, I've never seen anyone talk about that. Maybe. I mean, if you're going to take from one Scandinavian country, then, why not go after the next one, Norway? I don't think the Norwegians would be cool with this, though, of course. Trump dreams at 3 a.m. The Svalbard Treaty of 1920, other countries can mine there for free under Norwegian law, so there's no need to buy it. No, our fish! Don't give him any ideas. Is there a Poland in Asia? A Poland, so I'm assuming that means that somebody that just got destroyed every couple centuries. I don't know, I'm trying to think.
But is there any Poland in Asia? By the way, the standards for Poland are being so unlucky that you just vanish from the world map.
Okay, so that was right. So just getting wiped out every so often. Asia's so big too. Why's it got to be this continent? I wonder if it's India. Maybe India? India has struggled with a lot of invasions over the years, over their history.
We got Tibet and East Turkestan, which are controlled by China.
Yeah.
Then we got Nagorno-Karabakh, which declared independence from Azerbaijan in the 1990s, but in 2023 got reclaimed by Azerbaijan. Then somehow Kashmir fits into our criteria, as it's divided between India and
so you're talking about just regions. I don't know. I do kind of think that India would be interesting. I mean, remember that India's only been unified for a little bit. They were pretty divided up. But yeah, you got the Mongols, obviously the British. There were Persian empires in the ancient times. Foreigners have invaded over 200 times in general. The problem is that India doesn't disappear, but like I said, India wasn't a unified country. Parts of India disappeared. Oh yeah, I was literally reviewing a meme about it. Look, all of these places at one point went after India. There's just been so many invasions, so many different empires throughout history. Again, they didn't necessarily always get conquered, but it was still an invasion. The actual standards are 1 had to be a big empire, 2 always comes back, 3 it's just lucky. Fun fact, Poland's borders have always changed, both in World War I and World War II. Oh, maybe it is Korea, because China was there, Japan was there, Russia was there, the USA, the Koreas themselves mine. I think the better option is the Philippines, because the Philippines are Catholic, have had at least 3 great powers want you, the British, the USA, and Spain. Unlucky history, managed to humiliate one of Europeans' powers, predominantly, wait, which one is that? Predominantly conservative, wants the space. Filipino Poland! Fun fact, Poland is probably the only country that can't be defeated so much that it won't come back. That's true, they always come back.
So
Switzerland of America. I would assume
and Africa
might be Mexico if you think about it. They've been really new, although, yeah, I mean, the Mexican-American wars. Mexico tries to be like a modern-day Switzerland.
It's its own Switzerland, too. But is there a neutral nation like Switzerland in Americas?
Mountainous,
now, many of you would just say Canada just because it's nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Don't forget that they have war crimes. Oh, is that what we're going to talk about? I can tell. I think we're going to talk about their war crimes.
However, not only is Canada infamous for its tactics in World War II, but it's also part of NATO. Then USA is probably the worst answer. This only leaves Costa Rica, since this country doesn't even have a military.
Oh, that is true. I was literally just in Costa Rica. They talk about that. We're obviously talking about diplomatically who is like Switzerland, but I was kind of thinking like, what about geographically too, though? Chile is probably the closest because they just kind of hide in their mountains. Well, Switzerland has a military. USA, worst answer answer in North America. Russia, worst answer in Europe. The Middle East region, worst answer in all of Asia. Panama could also be considered as Switzerland. Always love the memes, info hub. Trump's top 4 things for America. Let's see. Is one of them buy Greenland and destroy Canada?
The last one will blow
Let's
your
see.
mind.
The last one's gonna blow our
Trump
mind.
wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico
okay,
to the
well, we
Gulf
already
of
knew that
America.
part.
Why?
We've been
Because
seeing that
he
a lot.
says it just sounds better. However, Mexico isn't exactly thrilled about this one. Next,
That-
at number 3,
yeah,
Trump
obviously.
is still trying to purchase Greenland.
Okay,
You
so
see,
we are gonna
owning
hit those.
Greenland would provide the U.S. with a critical foothold in the
Sounds like
Arctic,
that's definitely not
allowing
gonna
it to
happen,
counter
though.
Russian and Chinese influence.
Yes.
But will Denmark actually sell it this time? Probably not.
Nah.
Up next at number 2, Trump has decided to bring back his signature immigration policy.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
already resumed construction of the wall and plans to
Really?
tighten border
I actually didn't
controls
know
while
that.
executing
I'm not
mass
surprised.
deportations. And finally, at number 1, the U.S. government will now officially recognize only 2 genders. Trump has already
yeah.
signed
He
an
already signed that.
executive order reinforcing
I think that
traditional
is still in
gender
the courts,
definitions. So if you're any of this, then be careful.
Oh, no mention of the Canada 51st state thing? I mean, I guess it's not. I think it's kind of more of a joke. He's doing WWE3 speed run. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I thought that'd be the first one. I don't even know if he knows his plans just yet, to be honest. He probably has some, but it's probably a lot more. What if
What would
Earth only
happen
had
if only
100 people?
100
Okay, I think 50 of them are going to come out of just India and China. Are we supposed to do this proportionally? We're distributing them, right?
People were left on Earth. Imagine waking up one day to find that 8.2 billion people had just disappeared. The
Okay,
world
yes, Thanos went a little bit too crazy. He took out more than just half. No one's going to basically live in America. Compared to the Eastern Hemisphere, no one lives in these 2 continents.
would be so empty that finding another person would be nearly impossible. You'd have to walk the length
Oh.
of Alaska just to meet someone. But these last 100
We're not distributing by population density? I thought that's... Maybe we are, I don't know.
people wouldn't be in one place. 60 would be in Asia,
Oh,
14
60 would be in Asia. Okay, so I was probably wrong that 50 would be just in India and China, but a lot would just be in India and China. They both have 1.5 billion population. That's crazy.
14 across North and South America, 11 in Europe, and the remaining
11
15
in
in
Europe.
Africa. Meanwhile,
15 in
Australia
Africa.
would be left completely empty for obvious reasons.
Well, yeah, there's it's not very many people that actually live there. Even today, I mean, a couple million, but not that much for considering it's a giant continent.
With no
Oh
civilization
yeah, you would
left,
absolutely get.
nature
Oh man, the kangaroos would just destroy that one person, even if they did have a person.
would reclaim the planet. Asian jungles would cover entire cities. The African savanna would expand for miles.
Yes.
And the Amazon rainforest would take over most of South America.
Yeah,
With
there's been so many studies about like how fast nature would take over all of our civilized things like cities. Like they say like just 100 years and basically you wouldn't be able to see a lot of stuff. People forget that like skyscrapers and things, they need maintenance.
City grids
They will
going down,
collapse.
the internet disappearing, and fuel supplies running dry. Travel and communication will become very difficult. And
Yes.
with so few people left in the world, humanity would only have 2 options: to unite or face extinction.
Yeah, that would
But
suck.
where could they go? Ideally, Europe might be the best option due to good weather and
Yeah,
fewer
restart.
animals, making it the best place to rebuild.
The poor American that has to walk from whatever California all the way back to Europe. You would just have to be like out there in the wild just trying to find any other person. And if you're a dude and the person you find is a dude, dang, that doesn't help. You gotta have to like, repopulate and stuff. The Amazon wouldn't cover South America like that as most of the continent is too dry. The world map becomes Minecraft. My ass would disappear. I ain't the main character. If the 100 remaining people were engineers, that would be crazy. Oh yeah, I would. That's probably when the aliens would actually reveal themselves. I feel like Geo all day is gonna have to continue to keep us updated on this topic. China destroys the U.S. This is about global trade, isn't it?
China is the largest trading partner.
Yes.
However, this data is from 1990.
Oh my
This is
goodness.
how it
It's even
changes if
further
we move
back.
to 2020.
Yeah, so
Yes.
things didn't change. Obviously, things are not going to change much in terms of like which countries are now trading with China more, specifically in the Americas. But everywhere else, we'll just wait and see.
China now wins the South America. This is how the situation
dope,
looked
yeah.
like in Africa back then.
Oh, it's gonna be a-
and this is what it looks like.
Think about like what was going on in the 1990s for China. They didn't have their explosions until the 2000s. In the 1990s, I mean, it was really, Japan was the tiger of Asia.
Like currently. Now, watch this massive shift in trade with Asian countries. China now completely dominates
just
in this
dominates
continent.
Asia.
And the same is true for Oceania. The European
However,
trade
I believe this is still, if you only compare between China and the USA, this is not their top, it's not every single country's top trading partner.
still dominated by Germany. However, it could change
Yeah,
in
so-
the future.
Oh, Germany still dominates Europe. It's not quite that clean, though. Obviously, there are certain areas in Europe that are not trading with Germany. Obviously, Spain likes France, and Portugal likes Spain. Countries that neighbor Russia, they like to trade with Russia. Maybe not anymore. Yeah, so the map is not just completely clean. There's still some other players. I guess to be fair, you don't see certain countries with China over here in Africa. So some of these, okay, so this is showing actual top trading partners currently, although all of Asia, oh, that's not surprising just because, yeah, it's easy for China to get here. China really said, hold my beer. Germany's largest trading partner is Germany. Maybe if Germany is divided again, west and east side, insert Woody looking around the room and seeing he's been replaced by Buzz. Population comparison time
of the world's population.
in every continent or what?
We combine the population of China
and
India.
They
there are more
have
people in these two countries
33%?
than in all of those 178 countries combined.
Yes.
Just imagine the same amount of people lives in these two areas.
I mean, they're not including some of the biggest population countries, you know, the USA, Brazil, outside of obviously China, India. But there's a huge drop off. USA's in third, and we're not even close.
Are completely different in size.
Yeah, I mean, it's still so mind-blowing how many people live in those two countries. I mean, the fact that they were even able to get 1.5 billion almost in both is just insane. Like it's kind of amazing. Yeah, you have to combine all the blue nations to be able to equal the red nations. All the people they left out, though, are all countries with like over 100 million population, obviously. The even crazier thing is if you add a few fairly small neighboring countries, you get half of the global population. Yeah, if you probably add like Japan and Vietnam to these two red countries, you'd get very close to 50%. Indonesia, the countries that weren't marked blue have more than 100 million population people, yeah. Even crazier comparison, just one city block in Manhattan has more people than all of Antarctica. Well, Antarctica has like 3,000 people, but no, less than that, I think. Yeah, still keep in mind, overall world global population is like 9 billion total, like the population videos. Globatic David, why didn't France fight to the end?
Fight to the end in World War II?
Oh boy.
First,
well,
the German Blitzkrieg
is it not obvious because they got conquered, but then there was Free France. Let's see what he's gonna say.
40 overwhelmed French defenses.
Yes,
fast,
moving around the Maginot Line,
bypassing the heavily fortified Maginot Line.
Yes.
The rapidity and intensity of the German advance,
but there was still
left
South
the French
France
military in disarray.
And then
technically, France could
Africa
still fight, but after a large part of the army being defeated, politically, the country was divided and demoralized.
Yes.
Memories of World War I's devastation
that
made
must have
many
hurt
leaders reluctant to prolong fighting.
I mean, keep in mind, at this point in their history between France and Germany, obviously the Germans got a huge dub over France to get their unification. Then France won in World War I. Boom. Then you take a huge punch to the face, losing in the first couple months of World War II. Man, that must have sucked.
Paris fell and government fled south. Prime Minister Pétain, a World War I hero, argued for an armistice to save lives and preserve French sovereignty in some form. The surrender on June 22, 1940 led to the establishment of a puppet regime. Resistance persisted, but the defeat reflected strategic missteps, political fractures, and desire to avoid further destruction.
Yeah, they was not ready for that. They was not ready for the new forms of war. It was probably a little cocky too, because they got such a big dub in World War I. They didn't think the Germans would even come close in World War II. It's funny because they didn't even really know that that was going to be World War II at the time. They might have just thought it was a normal conflict again. The biggest issue was that the French military doctrine hadn't progressed since World War I. France in World War II basically did everything possible wrong. I mean, I'm sure that's a little bit of like hyperbole. I'm sure it did progress, but it didn't progress in the ways that they really needed it to. Never overestimate the military of a nation with 400 varieties only for cheese. Probably my favorite channel for YouTube Shorts history. Why does the USA own Alaska?
Alaska, it borders Canada, so why does the U.S. own it?
It's a very good question.
One day in the 1700s, some Russian dudes were floating.
I mean, the Russians were down to not sell it to us. They wanted to sell it to Liechtenstein, but they were just going to sell it to anyone that wasn't the British Empire.
When they stumbled upon some new land right next to Russia, it had mountains, rivers, and a whole lot of otters. So these guys hop out and discover how
furs
otters make pretty awesome coats.
Fur trade.
So they start turning as many otters into fancy fluffy coats as fast as they physically could. And they made a killing, but there's a problem.
It's also random, but the Russians also made it down to Hawaii. They visited Hawaii for a little bit there, but it doesn't really match their vibe.
They ran out of otters. So Russia, the country, was like, this land is a useless land. So they put it up for sale, but not to Britain, because they didn't like Britain. America, you want to or not want to buy?
Nah, don't really need it.
You want to buy?
No.
You love freedom. I give you a place to manifest more destinies.
Yeah.
Oh, as we do like that.
So the U.S. buys Alaska for $7.
We was cool back then. Don't forget. For a long time, actually, the U.S. and Russia was cool. It's just been the last like 70 years where things, obviously have soured.
$2 million, which is insanely cheap. That's like you selling your entire garage to your neighbor for $3.
And then like a decade or two later, we found all this oil up there, and Russia was probably just like, Bro.
Right after the sale, the U.S. discovers trillions of dollars
there it is.
in oil, gas, and oil,
Yeah.
making this one of the worst deals in history.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the Russians really needed that money at the time. They were struggling. Obviously, this was before they became the Soviet Union, but yeah, it was rough. Alaska is very cool to me, but I don't know why as many people hate on it when it's probably the best purchase in U.S. history. But I was going to say Louisiana Purchase is probably the best we ever made. Russia fumbled the bag. Nah, worst deal in history happened when the Mavs traded Luka. Dude, the animators went really hard on the poor otters. Fun fact, the only country that wanted Alaska was Liechtenstein, so there was a universe where Liechtenstein bordered Canada. I like the history breakdown, Henry. Check out all these channels. As always, big ol' thanks to the patrons. Drew's Argentinian Trust Fund. Rip, Grandpa. I will force Drew to eat Spanish food unless he remembers Imperial and modern Japan have the same flag. Alexander the Terrible. Connor Pavlik. Douchebaggins. Fredrik Tibblin. KingBearHaze. LuxembourgLover. NordTyrol. Niglu the Goat. Tambre. Check that link down below if you want your name here.